Hi everyone, it's Jules here. Welcome to our webinar, How to Turn Your $1,000 into a Lifetime of Free PR. In the little chat box on the right, just say hi so we know who's with us. And I'll get started in a couple of minutes. I'm just waiting to see if anyone else is going to join us and we will head off. So welcome anyway. Hi Martine. Welcome, welcome. All right, well, while I wait for people to filter in, I'm just going to get started, I think. So today, as I said, I'm going to teach you how you can turn $1,000 into a lifetime of free publicity. And publicity and PR are the same thing, which I'll explain a bit later. But before we get started, turn off your mobile phone, switch off your email, set aside the next 60 to 90 minutes, grab a notepad and a pen if you want to take some notes, because I'm going to give you lots and lots of hints, and sit back and learn and enjoy. As I said, today I'm going to talk about how to turn your $1,000 into a lifetime of free PR. And I guess what I mean is, in the same way that they say, give a man a fish and he feeds for a day, teach him how to fish and he'll feed for a lifetime. In the same way, I would like to teach you how to do your own PR. And then once you know the skill and the process, you'll be able to do it all yourself as many times as you like. So, you will obviously, once you know how to do it, be able to do it every month of every year, which is what I suggest. If you do try and do something once a month, then you'll always get some sort of ongoing coverage. And it also means, if you do it yourself, that you can build relationships with the media, because you're the one who's going to them time and again. And that way they get to know what it is you've got to offer and what you can talk about, and they might start to contact you, and it happens all the time. You know, if they know you're a good source of products or a good source of stories, they'll keep coming back to you. So first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I have been in PR since 2003, which is when I started my PR agency called Handle Communications. I have given that up at the end of last year in order to concentrate on Handle Your Own PR, which I founded in about 2010. And really haven't given it my full attention up until this year. So this year it's all about Handle Your Own PR. And so a little bit about you. You're in the right place if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, a retailer, a service provider. Perhaps you've got a product or a service, or you might be an artist, or perhaps you're just interested in learning about PR. So I'm more than happy to teach all of you. So firstly, as I said, introduce yourself and just tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your company name? What industry do you work in? And whereabouts you're based, because I'm just nosy and I like to know where people come from. And if you know who your customers are, then tell me who your target market is as well. And I'll just give you a quick minute to jot that down. And then I'm going to keep going. Hi, Martine, and hi, Debbie. The two chatty ones. All right, I'm going to keep going while you're writing about yourself, because there's a little bit of a lag for me anyway. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself while you're writing away. I am based in Melbourne, but for a few years I lived in Sydney through the sort of 5 or 6 years in the 90s and early 2000s. And I actually love this photo because that little office on the top floor above the 94 bus is where I worked when I first got to London, on a little magazine called This Is London. And then I moved back to Sydney and spent a year or so living there, and then moved back to Melbourne because I love it so much. And I've lived in lots of countries around the world, and I have to say Melbourne is easily my favourite city. So a little bit more about me. I've been a PR professional, as I said, since 2003, and I've worked one-on-one with loads of clients, mainly in the small business area. I've got a passion for sort of helping small businesses, and I really love what I do, and I particularly love it when my clients get their stories published in the media, mainly because I've seen the huge impact that it can make to their business and its potential to grow. And the more they do publicity, the more their business grows. But I have noticed that over the years, something was stopping people from using PR. It can be expensive. and only big companies can afford PR agencies, or that's, what the common perception is out there. So I've got a question for you. Have you ever had any publicity for your business or product? And if your answer is no, then what's been the biggest reason why? And if your answer is yes, how did it happen? Did you go and look for some publicity, or did somebody call you and it just kind of fell in your lap? So I'll give you another minute to answer that. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about us, but I'm flicking backwards and forwards between the chat just to have a look at what you've said. Oh, hi, Martine in Surrey Hills. Great idea, My Christmas. Love it. And Debbie's coaching and healing globally. Beautiful. Oh, so Martine, you do know a bit about PR. That's great. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So in 2013, having had the website run for a few years, we realized that we really needed to be more active in the area of PR education and teaching people, because it was all very well and good to sell the tools, but people are just too nervous to actually get ahead and do it. So we're continually improving our website, and this was the website we relaunched last year, and I'm now working on another one because a website is never finished. But our vision is to help as many small businesses as possible get as much publicity as possible, and that's never really changed. We've always thought the same way. And in fact, just to go back to that, you can see my old logo, and that was one of the first incarnations of Handle Your Own PR. But we still continue to sell media lists and one-on-one coaching, and we also have ebooks and all sorts of things in the store. This is just a little screen grab to show you. So this is a list of our media contact lists, and in each of those horizontal bars there is, if you click on it, there's a whole heap of media lists inside it. And then at the bottom, there's just a couple of examples of coaching if you want one-on-one coaching. Although I'm going to talk about the boot camp at the end of this, which I think is a really effective way of doing it as well. So we offer, look, an hour of my time to just talk to me about your business for $250, or you can book 3 hours of my time and for $700, and you get a lot more advice, and I can help you right the way through a whole campaign. But I still teach entrepreneurs and business groups. And like I said, I really love it when my clients succeed. And I love this photo mainly because there's a glass of champagne, which is one of my favorite tipples, but also good old Sydney. And I do love it when everybody succeeds. Okay, so enough about me. What are we going to cover off today? So first I want to talk about what is PR, because a lot of people aren't totally familiar with it. Obviously not you, Martine, but everybody else might not be sure. Then I'm going to give you some insights into the media. Then we'll talk about the steps that are required to do your own PR, and then I'll give you some time for a Q&A at the end. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our boot camp, because we've got a special offer just for tonight. But first, let's talk about what PR is. And I really love this little diagram because I think it explains the difference between advertising and PR very, very well. So if you can imagine, an ad is kind of like, you design it, you design what it says, and it's a little bit like, once it appears, it's a little bit like you saying, isn't my product great, or isn't my company great, and this is what we can do. And the difference with PR is that the editor of the magazine, or the TV producer, or the presenter, or whoever it might be, is kind of promoting you to their readers, who obviously trust the editor or the media outlet publisher. And so it's kind of like your best friend or somebody that you trust saying, you should try these guys, they're really good, or try this product, it's really good. It's much, much more powerful because it's come through that extra endorsement of someone else. But the reality is that most businesses can't afford to advertise. And for this, I'm not talking about the local paper, because a lot of businesses will put a small ad in the local paper. But if you want to get to the big, to around the country and to some big publications, it can be really expensive. And I've just got this little diagram to just let you see how expensive it can be. So for instance, the Fin Review, which for a lot of people is a bit of a holy grail, has casual rates that start, and casual rates just means if you came in off the street, this is how much what they charge you, at $2,200 for a little ad that's a bit smaller than a packet of cigarettes. So really small for nearly $2,500. The age starts at 13,600 for a quarter of a page, which is one of those strips that runs along the bottom of a page. So Again, very expensive, and you can't do an ad once, really, to be effective. You need to do it a few times so that people start to recognize that you're there. So as you can see, that would start to be a very costly exercise. The Woman's Weekly, which is a bit of a holy grail if you're trying to get to women, charges nearly $20,000 for a third of a page ad. And Mother and Baby magazine, if it just to take you down to a sort of a smaller, more niche level, still starts at over $3,500 for a third of a page. So you can see that advertising is really out of the reach of a lot of small businesses, and this is why PR will work for you. But before I tell you what I think PR is, I'd love to hear what you think your definition of PR is. So again, I'm going to give you a minute to just put it in the chat box. Martine, I can see your note about not being able to read the list. Don't worry, they were tiny. It was just really to show you more of the style of it. You'll be able to see them all properly on my website. So again, there's a bit of a lag, so I'm going to keep going and I'll come back to your answers afterwards. So what is PR? Well, first thing that you need to know is there is no difference between PR and publicity. It means exactly the same thing. One just means public relations is a more formal way of putting it, really. PR basically means that you offer a story or a story idea to an editor or a journalist for them to publish. So it's actually more about, yeah, you offer them a story or an idea and they do it for free. So if they like the story, they'll put it in. You don't have to pay them to do it. But the difference is that you can't always control when it will appear. And I'll explain part of the reason for that is that there are media lead times that you need to be aware of that journalists are working to. So even if they love your story and they say, I'm going to put it in the issue I'm working on right now, depending on how frequent that publication is, it might not appear for a while. So if you've set aside a budget, a small budget anyway, for advertising, why don't you think about PR instead? Because you get heaps more bang for your buck, lots of credibility, great SEO, which I'm going to talk about shortly, and it's also something you're going to be able to promote again and again. Plus, if you buy an ad or two, what do you do with it when the money runs out? So then you've got this great creative, but nowhere that you can place it. Excuse me. Let me just have a drink. Sorry about that. But if you learn how to do your own PR campaign, then of course you can repeat it time and time again and build up a relationship with the media so that they might even start to contact you, as I mentioned earlier, and wouldn't that be nice? But then the question is, so why would you use PR? Well, I guess because, and I believe, and I've worked across most aspects of marketing, and I definitely think PR is the best for small businesses. Editorial, firstly, is much more believable. Your business is being endorsed by someone, as I mentioned, but also people don't buy the media. They don't buy into magazines and newspapers or TV and radio for the ads. They do it for the stories and for the content. So if you can get your business into that content, then you're really going to get a much stronger awareness and reaction. And of course, the other great benefit of PR is that you don't pay the media outlet for your coverage. So once you work out how to do it and you know how to do it, it's essentially free. So first I want to give you a little case study of somebody that I worked with. They were a handle your own PR customers, and it's just such a, look, it's so unusual a business, but I just think it's quite funny. So I thought I would share it with you. So these two women from suburban Melbourne decided to set up basically a female escort service just for women who might like to have a male escort for business or whatever, or a party or a social event, but also obviously for, you know, sex. So these women who were absolutely gorgeous had no money left by the time they opened their doors, which was around the time of the Ashley Madison kind of website launching in Australia. And I think they just got fed up with that whole idea of affairs and was like, what about the women that are single? So they came to us and said, you know, we really want to run a PR campaign and we don't know how to do it. So we helped them. We wrote the media release for them. And the angle we suggested they used was two Melbourne mums take on the sex industry. Now, the other thing I have to say about these women is that they wanted to remain anonymous. Because they were both suburban mums, they didn't want anyone to see their faces or know their names, which obviously created an extra level of difficulty anyway in the PR. But I had thought that maybe someone like a Current Affair would take it, you know, where they put people in black in silhouette and then distort their voices. And I thought they might do something like that. But they, I have to say, were absolutely horrified. And you know, you can't predict how a producer's going to react, and said, "How dare you? What kind of a, you know, TV program do you think we are?" So anyway, these poor women got turned down a lot of times, but they kept going. They used the women's media list that we had on the site and the Victorian Metro media list. And finally, after a few rejections, they approached Grazia magazine, which was a beautiful glossy magazine that was around for a while in supermarkets, and it was all targeted at women. And they managed to get up a 3-page story, which, let me tell you, if they'd had to buy the advertising space, would have cost them over $18,000. And they got this great story about men for sale in the suburbs. And I love the opening line: "While others are starting cupcake businesses or parenting blogs, 2 Melbourne mums are running a very different kind of company, an escort service for neighbourhood women." So I really thought that it was great. So, and they were delighted. And of course, they did really, really well. Bit the doors, you know, when they opened their doors, people knew about them. And I don't think they've ever looked back since. So anyway, let's start talking about the skills that you need to be able to run your own PR campaign. So I guess there are 2 kind of main ones. The first one is that you are going to be approaching people that write for a living. So you really do need to have reasonable writing skills. And by that, I mean you need to have good grammar and spelling. You know, you need to know the difference between your there, and there, as we used to say, because there's 3 different ways of saying there. And if you don't think that you can do it, that's fine as well. But you can pay someone to write a good media release for you, but don't do it yourself if you don't think that your writing skills are up to scratch. And the other thing is that you need to be reasonably good on the phone. Firstly, because journalists may want to ask you more questions over the phone once you've sent through your media release, or even maybe do a formal interview. And I've done lots of interviews over the phone, and you know, you need to be able to speak clearly in that instance. Or if you don't want to talk to the media yourself, you need to find someone who's relevant to the business. So whether it's your business partner or somebody that's in some way involved in the business or in your industry, but you do need to find somebody that will talk on your behalf if you can't. Although I would encourage all of you and say, really, it's not that scary. So I would say do it yourself, because nobody knows your business as well as you do. I'm going to give you one more case study, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So this is a gorgeous woman called Jackie, who runs a website called Upcycled Bride. And she had a startup that started last year. She'd never done PR before, but she was adamant and very clear that she wanted to get on TV. And so she approached the women's media and the TV producers media list that we have on our site, which I have to say contains the contacts mainly for the morning shows, which is perfect for her because she knew who her market was. And she managed to get a big segment on mornings on Channel 9. And when I say big, I think she got the whole ad break in between the ad breaks. And it was, she managed to do like a fashion parade, like a catwalk show of a bride and a groom, because she also does bridesmaids outfits and flower girls and all that kind of thing. She also had huge interest from the studio on Channel 10 and Weekend Today on Channel 9 and The Project on Channel 10. But I think it was the time of the Paris terrorism thing, you know, the machine gun attack. I can't remember what it was named. It's got out of my mind. Anyway, so she found, unfortunately, she was pitching at that time. And they bumped her story, but she's actually about to go and do it again. I was speaking with her last week, and she's all set to go out again with a new angle. But obviously, her business was built really on the back of the PR that she got. Excuse me, I've got a real frog in my throat tonight. So next, I'm going to give you some insights into the media, because you do need to understand how the media works to a certain extent in order to be able to do your own PR. So the first thing I want to talk about is the different media types. I think there's some really obvious ones, probably at the top of that list that you know very well, and then the bottom ones as well. But I'm going to talk to you about them in terms of PR. So TV is great if you have a visual angle or you've got a person to be interviewed. So remembering that it's obviously a visual medium, it does need to have something visual about it. You can't just say that you want to do an interview about, you know, something and it's not going to have some kind of an interesting angle to it. Radio is perfect if you have someone that you want to be interviewed. or if you want to be interviewed yourself. Magazines are really great if you've got products that you want to have featured, or perhaps you've got some advice for readers, or you've got a life story that might resonate with magazines. Newspapers also great, but remember with newspapers that there needs to be what they call a newsworthy angle, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But there needs to be it needs to be a story that you could imagine reading about in your newspaper. And it also will need a local angle. And when I say that, I don't mean just local papers, because obviously they want a local angle. But if you're in Victoria, then it's quite easy to go to the Herald Sun or the Age and tell them your story because it's local. But if you go to the Sydney Morning Herald or the West Australian, you need to have some kind of an angle as to why it will work for their readers as well. Bloggers are really a very new but very valid new type of media. You really want to target the ones with large followings because there are a hell of a lot of bloggers out there these days. I would say ideally you're looking for sort of 5,000 plus. But then if it's very niche, if the topic is really targeting the people that you want to target, then, you know, a blog, even with a small number of followers is great. And then basically you just treat bloggers just like any other media outlet, as like a journalist. So you send them the media release and then you follow up and off you go and you try to engage them. And then the last one, which is often forgotten about, but I think is equally as important, are email newsletters, many of which will go out from industry bodies or from big websites that do newsletters out to their database. And industry media, which are magazines, say, so if you're in the banking industry, there's a banking magazine and there's banking stuff. If you're in the electric light build business, there would also be an electric light magazine. So it's those kind of ones are great if you're doing B2B PR, which is business to business, but they also work for consumers. And I mean, I love them. I mean, if we can ever get on any small business newsletter or anything that goes out to small businesses, that's fantastic for handle your own PR. So think about who your target market is and your target industries, and also think outside the square of the media that are just trade media within that industry. So one of the most important things that you need to understand is media lead times. As I touched on earlier, that's really because if you approach a media outlet, you need to have an idea about how far ahead they might be working, and it also helps you plan when you should be approaching the media, bearing in mind when you may be launching or when your product might be available. So I'm just going to run through them all very quickly because we've got sort of limited time tonight, but you do need to kind of understand this. So blogs, websites, and social media, which are all online, are pretty much immediate. If you send them a media release this morning and they like it, they might have it or had it up this afternoon. It does tend to be very quick. Daily newspapers, which I'm talking about really your metro newspapers, tend to work between a couple of days ahead, 1 to 2 days ahead for the main body of the newspaper. And then, of course, they have weekend papers, and they tend to work all week on that one, and often a week ahead. Weekly newspapers, including local newspapers, tend to work, I've said 1 to 2 weeks ahead, but it really is 2 weeks ahead. Because of their print times, plus they've got to then get it out to a distributor who's then going to walk around and drop it all in people's letterboxes. So weekly local papers, definitely a couple of weeks ahead. Things like the Weekly Times and I can't think of other ones, but there are other weekly newspapers out there. Some of them might be working just a week ahead. But you really need to ask them, because the print times for newspapers really kind of hold it up and mean that there's a week or so of printing. So radio is much faster again, a bit more really like a daily newspaper or a blog. I have pitched to a radio station in the afternoon for a morning show, and they've rung me at 5 o'clock the next morning saying that they had someone drop out and they had a space. So in radio, you may well get one of those very, very quick turnarounds if they do have someone who drops out. But I certainly wouldn't approach radio at the most a week ahead, but really they only plan 1 or 2 days ahead. So don't go to them too early, or you'll find that they forget about it. Weekly magazines can be quite different. They tend to work up to 6 weeks ahead. So that is your New Idea and Woman's Day and some of those kind of magazines. If you were to approach them now at the end of February, you would probably find they're working on the mid-April issue. So Easter is well and truly gone for those guys. Then you've got monthly magazines, which are the ones that we all know very well. And most monthly magazines are working 2 to 4 months ahead. Again, if you went to a magazine that had just come or was just about to come out, there was a February issue, and you were trying to get in the April issue, you'd probably just about make it. You might be looking at the June issue if you approach them now. So again, you can see how you need to start planning ahead. And then bi-monthly, which it actually means once every 2 months, or quarterly magazines, once every 3 months, can work easily 3 to 6 months ahead, if not more. So just be aware of that they're working a long way ahead. And so if you approach them with something that you want in the next month's issue, they just can't do it. It's already gone to print. So it's impossible for them to add anything. Okay, so now let's talk about what media you want to target. And again, I'd just love it if you could, I don't know why that says poll question, but just answer in the chat box and tell me the kind of media that you would really like to get. Okay, I'm just going to give you a minute and then I'm going to keep on going. All right, so you put in the chat box the media and I'll come back and look at it afterwards. But let's start talking about the steps that are required for doing your own PR. So there are sort of 3 stages that you need to go through. The first one is all about getting ready, because there's no point going out to the media until you're ready to answer their questions. So for that, you're going to need good photography. You're going to need some samples or a trial, somewhere that the journalist can experience your product or service. And you're going to need a media release. Then you're going to have to start doing it. And by doing it, I mean you're sending it out to the media. So for that, you're going to need a media list. You're going to have worked out what your pitch is. And then you're going to have to start doing some follow-up to check that they got it. And then you've got the post-PR process, which is all about working that media clipping once you get one, and how well that can work for your SEO, which I will touch on as well. But firstly, let's talk about what you need to get started. So there's just a few things you need to have. One is your company logo or a product logo, which is just a low-res JPEG that you insert into the document header, a little bit like letterhead for your media release. But journalists will look to the top of the article, of the document, to see what the media release is about or who it's come from. The next thing you need to have is some sample products or trials ready to go. So that means that by the time you send it out to a journalist, you need to be able to either follow it up if they're interested with a sample, or let them experience in some way your product or service. It might be a restaurant and you invite them to come and have a look or whatever, but you do need to be ready to go with some samples or a way that the journalist can try your business. You need to have details for where to purchase. And I know this sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I see media releases and people have forgotten to put that in. I would suggest that that's just your website and you direct people there and then send them out from there. And if you have if it's a retail product, then send them to your website for a list of stockists. You definitely need to have your website live and ready for scrutiny by the time the article is published. Having said that, if your website is in beta, or you're just testing it, by the time you're sending out to the media, and say you're going to the bridal media who tend to work on quarterly magazines, so they're 6 months ahead, you're more than able to let them have a look at it when it's not quite ready for the public, as long as it will be ready for the public by the time the article comes out. The other thing you, of course, need to set aside is some time. And I would say roughly you need about a day to get started to write your media release and start sending out the email to the journalists. And then about 1 to 3 hours a week to do some follow-up, depending on how many people you've sent it out to. And last, but certainly not least, you need to be prepared to put in the effort and to be motivated to keep doing this, because once you get started, it can be really rewarding. There is honestly nothing better than finding out that a media outlet has said, yes, you're going to be in the next issue of whatever, or we're going to interview you whenever. So I really encourage you to do it, because it is very rewarding and it's free, which is always great when your purse might be a bit lean. Okay, so getting ready. So the first thing that I think is crucial is photography, and not just if you have a product, also if you've got a business and you have pics of your founders. So let me run through this with you. You need to be able to show people, including the journalist, and then the journalist will want to be able to show their readers what the product looks like, and ideally it being used. So depending on what the product is, they often like to see it in use, which means beautiful, professionally shot images, not images that you've done with your iPhone and no proper lighting. Really, the quality of the images can make a huge difference as to whether you manage to get a story up or not. The other thing that's really important is if you're in fashion, obviously you definitely need to have photographs as well. But if you have a business that you think is, you know, there's no photos to be done, then take pics of the founders, because you will be able to use it time and again, and you can use it on your website and in newsletters and ads, all sorts of things. You'll find you use them time and time again, but really use a professional. It'll be worth it in the long run. But I'm just going to tell you, if you have a product, the 3 types of images that you need to have ready. So firstly, you need to have a straight product shot, and that product shot is normally done on a white or a plain colored background, and the product is still in its packaging, or at least the packaging is showing. So, and that's really so that people know if they walked into a shop or if they get it delivered, what it's going to look like. So this is actually my product that I'm showing here. So the first thing was just a little collar that it uses as a hang sell in store. Then the next one is deep etched, and that is where you get the product and you basically cut it out so that it has no background. And journalists love this for those sort of what's hot and what's cool and things we love kind of pages. So deep etched shot. Then you need to have the lifestyle shot. Now the lifestyle shot is the shot that I was referring to earlier, where you show the product in use. So you can see these kind of shots, these 3 shots, how different they are. But you really need to have all 3 before you start doing your PR campaign. And then, as I said, for fashion PR, you need good photography too. So you might have shots of your clothes on models, but you might also want to have a flat lay image, which is the product lying flat on a white background, probably on the floor, and you shoot it from above. So I'm sure you've seen those for belts and necklaces and scarves and things like that, but they do use that for clothes as well. Okay, and then once you've got your photography, as I referred to earlier, you really need to get some samples ready if you have a product. So if you have got a product, the journalist or the producer will probably want to get a sample so they can see and touch it. It's all about sort of feeling what the quality is like and how easy it is to use and all that kind of thing. If you've got a service, then try and think of a way that you can let the journalist experience it. Make sure that you allocate some samples to send out to the media after your initial approach, and only if they show interest. So I'm not a believer in sending out samples to the journalists and then following it up with, did you like it? I think a lot of that's just such a waste. Most of them the ones that aren't interested are going to give it to their friends or the person on the desk next to them or whatever, or God forbid, throw it away. So really, you're much better off sending an email to them to let them know that you can send them a sample. And then when they say, yes, I'm interested, you send them the sample, which means that you're pretty sure you're going to get a story as well. Now, the next thing with samples is don't expect to get the sample back unless it's of a very high value. So journalists get sent samples all the time. They come from all over the place, and really they don't expect that they're going to have to send it back unless it's a really expensive item. But if you do want it back, so for instance, it is a piece of jewelry or it's a sculpture or it's something that you do want back, make it easy for the journalist to get it back to you. So give them a stamped addressed envelope or an express bag that's already been filled out, or perhaps you can give them a prepaid courier slip where you've already put on it all the details for where to send it to get it back to you. But if you want it back, you really do need to be prepared to make it as easy as possible for them. Now, if it's a high cost item, and for instance, we did this with prams, and I know you can do it with cameras and things like that as well, then obviously you don't want to send one out to every journalist, not at $1,500 a pop. So what you can do then is choose one item and offer it to journalists to road test or to try it out and then send it back to you so they can review it. So we've done this before, and one of the ways you can do it is send it to, say, you know, Bauer Media, to one magazine, and then ask them to pass it on to another one. But again, you're going to have to make that easy by pre-filling out the courier slip and all the rest of it. And in terms of the number of samples, as a rule of thumb, as long as it's not too expensive, I would normally set aside about 20. Because if you don't use them all up, sending them out to journalists, you might be able to offer them as prizes. So the next we come to the bit that everybody is always nervous about, and there's no need to be, but it's all about writing a media release. So look, I've got such a short amount of time to spend with you. I'm only going through top level stuff. There's more information on my website, and as I said later, I'm going to tell you about the boot camp, which starts tomorrow night, and you may want to come and do that because we can work, directly on your business. But anyway, to write a great media release, firstly, it needs to be attention grabbing and well constructed. It also needs to have a great first paragraph that really grabs the journalist's interest and explains what it is that you are going to talk about. Most media releases are about a page, 2 at the most, but really you try and keep it as succinct as possible because they can always ask for more information and you can provide it then. But try and keep it simple so that they can understand quickly what it is that you're trying to promote. Clearly communicate your key messages. And when I say that, I mean some people have maybe 5 great things about their business or 5 great product attributes. Carefully consider whether there's any way you can break that into 5 individual stories you could send out to the journalists rather than sending everything at once. What I find if you send everything at once is that the journalist will look at it, choose one of the points, and then say, no, I've covered this story now, I'm not interested in doing any of the other points. Whereas if you send them just one angle at a time or one key message at a time, they may pick it up 2 or 3 times. So that's just a little hint. The other thing to remember is that you're writing for the end reader or the end watcher or listener, but I guess when you're writing, it's for the reader. So you're not writing your media release as if you're writing it to the journalist. You're writing it as if the journalist is writing it for their end user. So you really need to try and keep it very simple. And when you're talking about you're talking about a consumer. You're not talking about the journalist. And then also important is to include a low-res photo in your release. I've told you about how important photography is. And I'll give you a great example, actually. When Handle Your Own PR was initially launched, we obviously went out to all the small business media. And the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age picked it up in their small business section, which we were thrilled about. I think we got about a third of a page and we were beside ourselves. And then I think it was about a week or 2 later, they ran another story and it was even bigger. It was like a half-page story with a massive photo of Simone and I, who was my business partner at the time. And we were amazed and we went back to the journalist and said, what happened? And she said, actually, what happened was the editor on the weekend or the chief of staff on the weekend didn't realise you'd been on during the week, was running around the newsroom saying, I need something with a photo, I need something with a photo, spotted the photo of you 2 on someone's computer and said, okay, we'll run this story. So we got a double dip purely because we had a photograph of ourselves. If we hadn't, we wouldn't have stood out. So a lot of people don't do photos, but that's kind of the reason that I advocate that you do, because it makes it much easier for a journalist. And then the last but not least, the other thing that you need to make sure you cover in every media release you write is what is it that you're selling? I know that sounds crazy, but you've just got to make sure that you get that in the first paragraph. And one way to think of it is, why are you selling it and what problem does it solve? In what way did you come up with the idea, or why did you decide to take on the distribution, or why have you created the business idea? So what you're selling and why you're selling it and what problem does it solve all really needs to be up in that first paragraph. And then at the end, you need to say where it is available. And as I've already said, I would suggest you send people to your website, and then from the website, you can send them to other places. And how much does it cost? There is no value, especially if it's a product. It's different if it's consulting, but if it's a product, there is no point, not saying what it is, like real estate agents not saying what a house is worth. I think for me and a lot of other people anyway, if you don't put the price in, then people will assume it's too expensive and move on. What not to include in a media pitch, any ads at all. As soon as you send an ad to a journalist, they're going to flick it onto the advertising department and you're going to get called by the sales rep. So ads are a real no-no, and it doesn't matter how beautiful they are and how much good information is in them. Editorial is very different from advertising, and it's kind of never the twain shall meet. So keep it all away. What you also don't even think about including clippings from other media, because even if someone's done a great TV story for you, and it explains your business really well. What you'll find is that journalists are always looking for something new. And if they see that it's already been covered, they're going to go, no, I've got another 50 other pictures that have been sent to me today. I'm not going to do this story. It's already been done. So just keep it yourself. I mean, it can be on your website or whatever, but don't make it obvious, and certainly don't send it in the email to the journalist so that they know that you've already had stories up. The next thing, well, I've said don't put logos, but I mean in the content of like they shouldn't be on the photos and they shouldn't be in the content. Obviously, it's okay to have the logo at the top that I've talked about, like letterhead. But the other thing is TM signals and little small c copyright signals and R for registration. It doesn't matter if it's a registered trademark. That means nothing to people reading a story. And I defy you to find an article in a magazine or a newspaper where they have put TM in, unless it's advertorial and it's been paid for. That's just not the way that editorial works. So there's no point even putting them in. I would stay away from customer testimonials unless they're from someone with a high profile, mainly because I think we all know, and journalists do as well, that you can get anyone to write something nice about your business. So, you know, if you're targeting sports people and you've got a high profile sports person that's given you a testimonial, that's a completely different ball game. Or you're targeting entrepreneurs and you've got some wildly successful one that everyone knows about, then definitely I would say include it, but not, you know, Joe Smith from down the road or Joe Smith from whatever, because the journalists don't need to see that. They'll go to your website anyway and you can put them on there. And the last thing I'd say is don't use jargon or slang unless it's appropriate, and really it's only appropriate in industry media and trade media. So you need to write your media release in the kind of tone that you would use and the kind of words that you would use to explain it to your best friend or your mother. Somebody who's not going to be able to understand it very well. Just because, you know, if you're reading an article in a magazine or a newspaper, they don't go into a whole lot of acronyms. They don't talk in tech talk or anything else. You just got to talk in plain English as if you're speaking to someone that has no idea what you're talking about, because it's quite possible that that will be the case. And it's that kind of lowest common denominator thing. So nice and simple, make it sound excited, make yourself sound excited, and use a conversational tone as if you were explaining it to me. All right, so we're going to move on, because I know this is another big area for people, and which is, what is your newsworthy angle? Now, I am going to cover just a few of many suggestions that are out there, and in fact on my website I think I've got about 10 or 15 different suggestions for angles that you can use. But I want to touch base with some of these because they're the more popular and more easy ones, I guess. So the first thing is, if your product or your business is new, then already it's newsworthy. Journalists are always looking for something that's new. So that should be enough the first time around. Then you want to start thinking another angle could be, does it relate to a popular TV show or a news story or something that's trending in social media at the moment? Make it topical. Is there any way you can spin the story so that it refers to My Kitchen Rules, or it refers to, you know, Cardinal Pell, God forbid, or any of those kind of things, you know, something that's topical. For instance, I guess you might say this new cookbook will have you cooking better than the winners in MKR, or, you know, that kind of thing, or be a MasterChef winner by using this product. So it's just working basically the name of a popular show into the story. There is another angle, which is celebrity, but you do need to be very careful with this. But if you have got a product that a celebrity loves and they have given you their permission to use their name, then that can be a really great way to get a story out there. Or if you can get a celebrity who might be a friend or someone you know to actually talk to the media on your behalf, it'll be much easier for you to sell it. But do be careful, because celebrities are used to being paid for endorsing products, and you have to get their permission first. We did some contras once with Bert Newton's daughter when she had her first baby, and gave her lots and lots of prams and strollers and baby clothes and all sorts of things. And then we managed to swing a story in Women's Day. It was an interview, and we wanted her to be the spokesperson for us. And she turned around and asked for another $5,000 to be able to do the interview. So it's just to give you an idea that celebrities are used to being paid a lot of money to do things for people and for businesses, and you know, you just don't want to get sued, I guess. The other way you can use a celebrity is to send them a product and hope that they'll be shot in the paparazzi using it. But if you're going to do that, it really does need to be a very distinctive product that they will probably have outside. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. The other one is, have you got an interesting backstory, which might mean that you've changed careers dramatically, you know, and you've gone from heading up a big marketing department to, I don't know, running a small fishing business or something, but something quite dramatic. Or has there been a life-changing moment? Did something happen in your life that made you decide to run this business? Is there an unusual link? Are you a bald hairdresser? Are you a Japanese person running an Indian restaurant? I love some of these. Are you a short person running a tall clothing company? Are you somebody who's heading up a computer software company and you've never had any training? I mean, is there some kind of weird link that you can use? Have you got any tips or advice? Now, this is a really, really good way to do it, and one that I really advocate, and on the bootcamp we talk about this a lot, because if you can position yourself as an expert, it can be a really great way to get exposure. And when I say expert, you don't have to have a degree in something, you just need to understand the market. For instance, we had a bedding guy that was selling beds, and we got him to do 10 tips on, you know, the best mattresses for the different ways of sleeping, and managed to get him some great stories. And we did the same with a picture framer. I mean, this is a few years ago now, but it was a friend of a friend who was just a Melbourne-based picture framer, and we got him to write some tips about 10 tips or 5 tips for the best way to hang pictures on the wall and how to group them together, whatever. And sent it out with the heading, "Are you well hung?" and used that for the email as well that went to the journalists, and it was amazing. He really got so much coverage. And I think all because yeah, sorry, my dog's just scratched at the door and distracted me. But yeah, all because of the great heading and also the great tips, because anyone can use those kind of tips. So as I said, on the Handle Your Own PR website, we have a whole lot more tips, and you can also Google them and get PR story angle ideas. So I've kind of told you how to get ready. Now let's start talking about how to actually do it. So the first thing you're going to need is some media contacts, and there are 2 ways that you can get media contacts. One, which is free, is that you can create your own list, but it will take you some time, and the other way is to buy one. And obviously I have a bit of a vested interest because I sell media contact lists on my website. But first, in the spirit of being really open and you know, all that karma stuff, let me tell you how to do it yourself for nothing. So to create your own list, you first need to research some recent articles or stories in the media that you're targeting. So you're looking for the kinds of stories that you think they might write about your business or your product. Then you want to try and make a note of the name of the journalist and their contact details if you can find them. And for instance, News Limited, when they do articles online, often if there's a byline for the journalist, you can click on their name and it'll give you the email address. If not, one of the ways to do it is to ring the media outlet and ask the receptionist if they can tell you who the editor for Lifestyle is, or if you know their name, even better. And the other way is to just get on good old Google and start researching. And we did have somebody on the boot camp that had done that, and I reckon she said she spent, I think she said she did 2 weeks full time to get 30 names on a list. So it does take a bit of time, but if you don't have any money, it is definitely one way that you can do it. The other way, of course, is that you can buy a media list. And you can buy them on our website, as I've said. And one of the benefits of, or some of the benefits of being able to buy a list is firstly that your media release will reach interested journalists. Now, I only say that because the lists on our website, the media contacts on our website get contacted all the time, and we tell them that Handle Your Own PR is a website for teaching people how to do their own PR, that they won't be professionals who'll be contacting them, but that they may get a story before a more mainstream PR company, you know, is able to be afforded. And so we only include the names of the people that say yes, they are interested in being contacted by you. We have personalized email addresses for the majority of the media outlets. So that means that it isn't editorial at or info at, whatever the domain name is. It's actually Mary Smith or John Brown or whatever the person's name might be. And we also have their email address and their phone number. You obviously would save yourself hours and hours of time and a lot of aggravation if you can afford it. And most of our media contact lists sell for under $250. I think we've got one for $300, which is the small business list because it's particularly big, or the national business media. And the other one is the TV producers, because I've just put another sort of 10 names, 15 names up there. And they're only $250 and $350, so they're still, it's all very affordable. And of course, the biggest benefit of buying a media list is that you can get started straight away. So if you are going to get started straight away, what's the best way to contact the media? Well, it's funny, there are sort of two different ways. So some prefer an email first and some prefer a phone call first. So magazine editors and web editors and bloggers and sort of online media outlets all prefer an email first. Magazine editors are constantly bombarded by people pitching to them. So they really prefer to be able to weed out the stories from the email, and then if they're interested, they will phone you. And perhaps it's a magazine that you're absolutely desperate to get into and it's key to your promotion, then I would say pick up the phone and call them. But otherwise, it's sort of email only with those guys. The news editors on newspapers and on TV and radio all prefer a call first. Just a quick call. You've got about 3 or 4 minutes probably to tell them a little bit about your idea, and then if they like it, then they'll ask you to send them an email with the rest of the information, and that way you've captured their attention, and you know that it's kind of worthwhile. They may say, no, I'm not interested, there's no angle there, and you could say, what sort of angle are you looking for? And the same with radio and TV producers. So first you want to call them, make sure they're not on air at the time. They're never very receptive if the show is actually live when you ring. And then email them after you've spoken to them and give them a bit more detail then. So I'm just going to touch on the protocol that you might use for sending emails out to journalists, because I know that's the way that most people prefer to do it. It's kind of nice and passive and you don't have to actually kind of do the whole sell thing in the same way. So the things that you need to have are a catchy subject line. Now, I actually have had a past student say, so can I say pitch to the Herald Sun or pitch to the Courier Mail? And I was like, oh my God, no. Would you open an email that was sent to you like that? Absolutely not. So try and make it funny or clever. A little play on words always goes down well. Or worst case scenario, use the heading that you've used on your media release, because you've probably thought about that and got quite a nice one there. The next thing is that you want to send a personalized email to each person on your list. So you want to say, hi, John, or hi, Mary, and only choose one person per media outlet at a time. So if you want to send to the Herald Sun and it's the motoring editor you need, then you just send it to the motoring editor. If he says no, or you don't hear back from him, then you could send it to someone else, or maybe the chief of staff. But I would suggest that you choose one person per media outlet, mainly because whether you're aware of it or not, a lot of them all sit in the same area in the newsroom, and they can all see, or they all might ask around going, did anyone else receive? I've just got this great story idea. Has anyone else got it? And if everyone else says, yes, I've got it too, they're just going to go, nah, I'm not interested. Someone else can do it. So try to send it to one person per media outlet. What I'd like to do is to copy and paste the whole body of my media release into the email, and then I attach it as well. But that's really to just give the journalist one less click. That way they open it and they see your email right in front of them. And a low-res version of your image. And when I say low-res, I would suggest it is under 1 megabyte. Should sit top and center of your email, really. So when they open the email, there's a nice picture or an image there in their face. And then they'll scroll down to the media release. And then at the very top, above the photo, and you know, at the very, very top of the email, you should do a short, snappy paragraph or so, which is just your intro, that might say, hi, Joe. Please find attached my story idea for X, and I have samples available in a high-res image, or I've got a person to be interviewed, or I've got some research, So please let me know if you'd like them. And that way they know exactly what's happening in the first paragraph, then they see the photo, then they go down to the story idea. And I find that that works very, very well. Okay, so once you have sent out your media release, you need to do what they call follow-up, which is really just about contacting the media that you've already sent your release to check that they've received it. And if they haven't, to resend it to them. And if they have, maybe you can try and sort of pitch it to them a little bit more. It can be one of the most crucial stages of the campaign, bearing in mind that a lot of journalists are approached by so many people during the day that even if they love your idea, they may forget it. And I've had so many journalists say, thank you so much for calling back. I just didn't know where I really wanted to do that story and I'd forgotten all about it or whatever. You won't find that they get cross with you for doing follow-up. Just remember that they receive hundreds of emails every day, and as long as you are very, gentle about it, then there's no problem with just going, did you receive this and did you like it? Try to send a follow-up email within a week of the first one going out. In fact, I'd even say within 2 or 3 days if you can. Again, personalize it and put their name in it. But what I like to do is I find the original email that I sent them and I forward it back to them saying, hi, just checking that you saw this. What did you think? Because that way they can see when I sent it to them in the first place. Or I'll call. If it's a really special one that I really want to get into, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call them. So follow-up can be one of the most crucial parts of the campaign. Let's assume that you did your follow-up and that you managed to get the article in and that they have printed it in a magazine or you've done an interview on radio. What do you do then? Well, the first thing that I think you should do is thank the journalist or the editor who gave you a mention, mainly because no one really does. I mean, my journalists always say to me that people are all over them like a rash trying to get a story up. And then when the journalist says, yes, I'm going to publish it, they never hear from them again. Well, don't be that person, because if you say thank you, you're going to be one of the few people that calls them back and they're going to remember you. So, and of course, on top of all of that, they're doing you a big favor. So it's nice for you to show your appreciation. You might have another angle that you can suggest to them, or it's an opportunity to kind of chat to them and give them a bit of feedback about what you thought about the article and maybe the response that you got from the public. So, it's all about building that relationship. And as you would with anyone else who gives you something, say thank you. And that is all. I will get my mummy hat off now. All right, so now we're going to go on to clippings, which are really the old-fashioned term that people used to use for cutting a magazine or a newspaper article out of the media. These days, it's still the term we use, but it can mean anything for radio or TV or anything. So always after you've had an article or an interview approved, ask for a copy of it. Ask them to send you a copy of it, because radio, they tend to scrub interviews within a week. And newspapers and magazines often, it gets lost or whatever. So in fact, it's very hard to get a newspaper to send you an article, but most magazines will either send you the article or the issue that the article is in. If you're the other thing to ask is, are you allowed to use it for social media or on your website? Don't assume. Once they have published the article, they will consider it their own intellectual property, even if it's a story about you. So you don't have the right to take their story and plaster it all over the place until you've got their permission. So just ask. Most of them will say yes. Every once in a while they'll say no, and I'm experiencing that at the moment because I was on Sky TV last week doing an interview, and I haven't been able to get a link because they don't put it up on their website. So I rang them and said, can I get a copy because I'd like to show people? And they said, sure you can, and that'll be $590. So this is a clip. I haven't even seen it and I was on TV, but there you go. So they don't want to let people use it unless they pay a whole lot of money for it. Sometimes, and more often than not, they will at least let you show a link to it. So you can put a link on your website that takes you or the person through to the media outlet to view it. But that also can work really well, and that gives both of you inbound traffic, which can be fantastic. So let's assume that you've got your clipping. What do you do with it now? Well, you really want to work it. And the great thing about editorial, unlike an ad, as I said earlier, is you can, because everyone wants to read an article that's been written about you or your business. So I would suggest that you think about putting it up on your website, either in a media section. You might like to do sort of media coverage or something like that. You can certainly put it out on all your social media channels. You can put it out in your blog and maybe put a link to it. Maybe in newsletters out to your own database. You might have a business network of, say that you're a wholesaler and you've got a whole lot of retailers. You might like to send it to them, or you're part of a business network and you want to go, woohoo, look, we managed to get an article in. And of course, if you've got a physical space, then why not frame it and stick it up in the office, in the waiting room, or in the shop in the front window, so people can see that the media have endorsed your business or your product. And the other thing to think about is that PR is fantastic for SEO, which is search engine optimization. Google loves inbound links from what they call reputable sites. And a reputable site is one that a whole lot of people go to and that changes all the time. So the media is perfect for that. And the more popular the media outlet, the better it'll work for you. So, for instance, Handle Your Own PR got an article, as I mentioned earlier, in the Herald Sun and not Herald Sun, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age in 2010 when we launched, and I reckon it still comes up in the first couple of pages if you Google Handle Your Own PR. So it's that powerful. It just stays right up at the top. My hint to you is try to ensure that you get the web address of your business in an article rather than just the business name. So when I'm talking about Handle Your Own PR, I ask them to actually write www.handleyourownpr.com.au, because that will provide a link out from their website rather than just saying Handle Your Own PR as separate words. Mainly, and some journalists will do this and others won't, but it's much more effective for your SEO if you can actually get the web address in there that's clickable on. Okay, well, let's assume you have got all of that, and I reckon you might have some questions now. So I'm just going to have a quick look now at the chats, and if you've got any questions for me, put them in, and otherwise I'm going to tell you a little bit about the boot camp. But I'm sorry I've been racing along, but I've only got an hour, so I really wanted to see. Sorry. Debbie's got to go. All right, Martine. Oh, Martine, why a low-res photo? It's basically so you don't clog up the inbox of the journalist. So imagine if everyone was sending them 5 and 10 meg images, it just clogs up their inbox and they just delete it straight away without opening it. So you really want low-res. You don't want to use up their inbox at all. So that is the reason behind it anyway. So let me tell you a little bit about the boot camp now. While we love doing these talks, I guess we realise we've got a long way to go for people to be doing their own PR. And media lists and online tips have only solved part of the problem, because for a lot of people it's just too daunting to do it all on your own, which is the beauty of the boot camp. There are limitations that I've got if I get up and do talks, mainly geographical ones, because obviously I can only talk to whoever can come along. But also there's not enough time in an hour, as tonight, for me to really get into detail about how to do all of this. And there's no support group. There's nobody else going through it at the same time as you, which can always make a big difference. So what we decided was that we would start a Handle Your Own PR boot camp, a PR boot camp, about how to generate free PR. And I would teach you all the way through, working on your own business, how to do your own publicity. So the boot camp consists of 6 90-minute weekly live webinar sessions with me. We do everything in much more depth than we've done today. So I take you right through all the key areas of how to run a successful PR campaign. Plus you get to ask questions in a group in the chat, but also via Facebook and email of me during the course of the boot camp. If you join the boot camp, you also get access to all the training materials that I present in each session, and a recorded version that you can listen to at any time. And you also get access to key ebooks that are available in our online store. And I've got some great ones in there about, how to approach the media, but also how to do a killer media interview, what to look for in an interview, and that kind of thing. And that just alone is over $1,000 worth of value. And the benefit, I guess, of the boot camp really is that you get to practice and learn on your own business or product. I give you weekly exercises to do after each session, and you get live support via the closed Facebook group, which I am on all day, so I'm always answering, but so are all the other members of the boot camp. And our introductory boot camp price is only $800, which is pretty good for 6 weeks worth of training and ebooks and all the rest of it. Now, if your business isn't ready yet, then really you've just got to think about what I was saying before, that this is about learning a skill that you can then repeat time and time again. And also bear in mind all the media lead times. So, you know, it might be that your business isn't going to launch till June, but it is actually for the fashion industry, and there are loads of monthly magazines that you would want to be going out to already. So I've got a bonus offer for today. The first person to sign up today gets a free one-on-one 1-hour session with me, where I'll just talk about your business and your goals and what angles of media will work for you. Now, I have had people say to me before, why would I do the boot camp if I can just buy an hour with you? But the reality is that firstly, you get 6 hours with me. In fact, you probably get closer to 9 or 10 hours with me through the boot camp. But more importantly, you're doing it with a whole group of people and you're all learning together. So everyone's at the same stage, everyone can ask each other questions. And our boot camps tend to be very active in the closed Facebook group. And you get that weekly interaction with everyone where you can all kind of talk about it together. So anybody, if you're not the first person to sign up today, anybody else who signs up for only $150, you can have an hour with me as well, so 40% off the normal price. But we're going to go one step further because we're starting the boot camp tomorrow night and we'd love you to join us. So today you can buy the boot camp for only $600 plus GST, and all you need to do at the checkout is use the discount code BC for boot camp 0216, and that will give you a 25% discount, which will bring down the price from $800 to $600. Now, the other thing that you should be aware of is that we have no intention at this stage, and we certainly haven't got one scheduled for another boot camp. So there is no point hanging out for the next boot camp because it might not happen. So I would suggest you sign up to this one, and then I'll help you learn those skills all the way through. And the other thing that we're going to do today, because it's the last day before, is that anybody who signs up today is going to get a free media contact list of your choice. I don't care any of the ones on the website. And if you want to buy any additional ones, I'll give you another 20% off that as well. And as I had mentioned earlier, we have over 80 media contact lists on our website and over 2,600 contacts. So all our journalist contacts have been asked if they want to hear from you, and they do. And as part of the boot camp, obviously you're going to write your media release, you're going to write the email that goes out with it, and you're going to get your media list ready. So I'm going to give you one to get you started, which should really help. So yes, you did hear right. Instead of paying what could be up to $3,700, you can have everything for today, for the boot camp for tomorrow night, starting tomorrow night, I should say, for $600. If you miss any lessons during the boot camp, you don't need to worry about it because we send you out a recording straight afterwards, and you can listen to that time and time again at your own leisure. And if you're worried about committing the time, then just bear in mind it's an hour. It's early in the week, but this time we're doing it on a Tuesday night. There will be the recordings, as I said, and bear in mind that this is a really good way of you knowing that you have a media release, a media list, some good angles, and you're ready to go with your publicity, either during the 6-week period or as soon as you've finished, you've got everything ready to go. So I just wanted to reiterate that. And then I'm just going to tell you, because I love this, what one of our past boot campers had to say. So this is one who has got a whole heap of coverage. But she attended the course that started in November and finished in December. So she went out just before Christmas, and she reckons that handle your own PR was the best thing she's done for her business. That Karina and I gave her all the tools she needed to get started, and that she recommends the boot camp to anyone who wants to understand how the media works and how to get your brand out there yourself. And we've got loads more people that talk the same talk. And we want to make you one of them. I really, really want to see you with some media coverage. So remember, remember $600 just for today, plus you get the media list, plus you get if the first one to do it gets an hour of my time, and you get the 6 lessons, the closed Facebook group, and all the rest of it for only $600. So I would absolutely love you to join us. and I hope to see you there. Now, Karina, did you want to play one of the past?
Jules, Martine's got a question for you. Oops.
Okay, so
Sorry,
Martine's
Martine's got a question for you. Can you?
Yeah, which one? Sorry. Okay, Martine, in terms of do you get access to the media lists? Through the boot camp, you will get a free media list of your choice, as I've just said.
Yeah.
And and the one about the low res, I think I've already told you, but so it doesn't clog up the inboxes. But I'd love you to join us, Martine. And I question. So are there any other questions from anyone? All right, well, I think we might call it a night. What do you think, Karina, or do you want to run that video?
I can run that video. Why don't I run the video of Chi?
All right, no worries. It'll show up. I think it shows up in your chat box, Martine.
All right, I'll just put it
Lovely
up
to
now.
have you on here.
Jules, I think the video is finished. I don't know what happened.